Poor Barbara, not for her the carefree hours of happy play, nor the busy hours of work and study. What has happened to her that she lies there so hot and feverish, so weak and dizzy, so miserable with suffering and pain? Our body is just like a little country that has been invaded by an enemy army. But the enemy in this case is not big soldiers. This invading army is so tiny that it can be seen only through a microscope. Its soldiers are the germs of communicable disease. Some of these disease-causing organisms are so small that they cannot be seen even with the most powerful microscope. They are detected only because they can pass through the tiny holes of this filter. A communicable disease is one which can be caught from someone else. This means that the germs have to leave the body of a sick person and enter the body of one who is well. The usual gateway by which they enter is through the mouth or nose. How do germs make the trip from sick to well and thereby spread disease? They may travel by one of several ways. Coughs and sneezes, which are not protected, send germs in a direct spray. Kissing also gives germs a direct, short trip. The public drinking cup is a favorite means of travel. Water, as we find it in nature, may have harmful germs in it. If we drink such water without first boiling it, we are giving these germs a free ride into our bodies. Milk is the best food there is for us. But if it comes from unhealthy cows, in dirty surroundings, or is handled by people having a communicable disease, it can become a good conveyor of germs. Rats and some insects, particularly the fly, are of great help to germs of certain diseases by carrying them from filth to the food we eat. Thus you see that germs have several ways of traveling from the sick to the well. As individuals and as a community, we can do many things to halt this movement of germs and prevent the spread of disease. A healthful community must have a safe water supply. Here we see sedimentation and chlorination, a part of the process of water purification. In rural areas, a safe water supply requires a properly constructed well located on higher ground and at a considerable distance from the toilet. The purity of a city's water supply is further protected by the sanitary treatment of sewage. A series of processes renders the waste non-injurious to health. In rural areas, the problem of disposal of human waste can be solved by the building of a proper type septic tank. Or, if this is impractical, by building properly constructed sanitary toilets. Care in all steps of handling milk will do much to reduce milk-borne diseases. Cleanliness in the dairy, healthy cows, clean and healthy milkers, sterilized buckets, and cans so constructed as to keep out dust and flies all help to bring us safe milk so important in our lives. Pasteurization, which does not take the place of all these other precautions, is the one way to make sure that milk is safe. Anti-fly measures, particularly the disposal of breeding places, will help halt one of the most important ways by which germs travel. Tight-fitting screens are effective not only against flies, but also against mosquitoes. We can do much to prevent the spread of disease by keeping away from those who are sick. Common sense tells us to stay away from indoor crowds whenever communicable diseases are prevalent. Always call the doctor early whenever a communicable disease is suspected. Early treatment may lessen the severity of the sickness and halt its further spread. It is the duty of anyone suffering from a contagious disease to remain at home until the doctor feels it is safe for him to go out among other people. Some diseases, such as smallpox, diphtheria, and typhoid fever, could be wiped out entirely if each and every one of us took advantage of the time-proved protection offered by vaccination and preventive inoculation. One of our best weapons in preventing the spread of disease is cleanliness, which is particularly important when there is a communicable disease in the house. Certainly, cleanliness should be observed in all places where food is sold or served. All dishes used by the public should be sterilized. Our hands may pick up germs. The one act of washing the hands after going to the toilet and before eating is an invaluable health measure. The use of paper cups instead of common drinking glasses will help keep down the transmission of disease. We cannot keep all germs from entering our bodies, but wise old nature has placed within us natural forces capable of fighting the invading armies of disease. The better the condition of our health, the stronger this last line of defense against the invader. Building up this resistance depends upon a well-balanced diet which satisfies all the food requirements of our body. Outdoor exercise in the fresh air and sunshine. At least 6 glasses of water daily. And plenty of rest. At least 8 hours of sleep every night. Every step we take to prevent the spread of disease means increased happiness and greater living efficiency for all of us.
Well, influenza A epidemics occur usually between September and May. This is what we call the influenza season, and it takes about 2 weeks after we give an influenza shot for that person to develop antibodies. So we like to have a population vaccinated as early in the fall as possible. When cold weather comes and when children are together in schools, we have the makings of possible significant transmission of any influenza virus if it occurs.
So a major delay could be dangerous.
Well, a major delay could be a problem, no question about it.
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
First, those in the study had to give a sample of their blood. Researchers wanted to make sure their blood did not already have the antibodies that fight the flu. They also tested the flu antibodies in the person's nose. That's a key area where the flu virus is spread. The person then signs a consent form agreeing to take part in the study. Next step, a physical. Bruce Thompson, who works at the lab, volunteered to show us how the study's done. Drops of the flu vaccine are placed in his nose. He'd be expected to return 7 more times to see if the flu antibodies have built up in his system. Most tested felt fine from the vaccine. Fewer than 10% had stuffy noses and cold-like symptoms. But the overall results of the 2 nose drop vaccines?
Both of them have been shown to be very highly protective, to offer better protection than the vaccine that's given by shot. And both cause fewer side effects also than the vaccine that's given by shot. We think that eventually all healthy people, including children, should get it. The reason that children might benefit is that children are the ones who develop the flu in the schools. They're the first to get it, and they take the flu home to their parents, then their grandparents, and their younger children in the household.
A killer culprit is identified in disease-plagued Zaire. The World Health Organization this morning confirms that the Ebola virus, a virus for which there is no known cure, is to blame for the African outbreak. The disease is already blamed for about 100 deaths in the city of Kikwit. Health officials say they're investigating a possible second outbreak in a town 60 miles west.
This is the prime suspect, a virus called Ebola, which has struck before in Zaire. In 1976, it infected 300 people in a region near the Ebola River. It killed 274 of them. The symptoms begin with severe headaches, followed by diarrhea, bleeding from the eyes, nose, and ears. In 90% of cases, death follows. There is no known cure. Now in a city of 600,000 called Kikwit, the same pattern has been reported. The head of a medical team called Doctors Without Borders, which sent representatives to Kikwit, spoke by telephone from Zaire's capital, Kinshasa.
Of course, there is some panic, so people are very much afraid and they are avoiding contact with the hospital and so on.
From Kikwit, the disease has now spread to a second city called Musango. It was believed to have been carried there by one of 2 Italian nuns who had been treating people with the illness in Kikwit. Both have since died of the disease themselves. Experts discount fears of the disease reaching the U.S. or other countries by airplane, for example. Zaire has no direct flights to the U.S. More important, they do not believe the virus is spread by casual contact.
I don't think there's any reason for panic at all.
Still, Ebola is considered so lethal that scientists studying the virus at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute wear protective suits with clean air pumped in to avoid even inhaling air that has been exposed to the virus. John Donvan, ABC News.
They're heading into a kind of medical maelstrom, looking for a cause to the outbreak of the apocalyptic Ebola virus there. That virus was discovered in the mid-1970s in Zaire. Ebola, authorities say, causes hemorrhagic fever, which turns organs to mush and brings on death often within days. Health authorities say they don't know what causes the disease, and they certainly don't know what will cure it. It spreads, we are told, by direct contact with bodily fluids and secretions. Health officials say some of those victims of the virus are healthcare workers.
There may be a clue in Zaire, a clue as to how the deadly virus got its start in Central Africa. ABC's Sheila McVicker is in Zaire this morning. Sheila, tell us about that.
Good morning, Mort. Medical researchers are saying that they believe that this outbreak of the Ebola virus started with one person who was ill. There is some suggestion and many reports that that person was a diamond smuggler who came across the border into Zaire from neighboring Angola. Medical researchers say that because the initial spread of the virus was to health workers, to doctors and nurses who treated this patient, who then became ill and died themselves and then spread throughout the hospitals, that they think they can trace it back to this one original case. But this is what it looked like yesterday morning in Kitwit. In the Zairean city of Kitwit, they are burying the dead. Mourning rituals have been abandoned, and medical workers gowned in protective clothing are the only ones who touch those who have succumbed to the virus and their coffins. Like most of the victims so far, this funeral was for a medical worker, an Italian missionary nun who contracted Ebola fever from patients she was trying to help in Kitwit's hospital. She got the virus from other nurses who were infected, says this nurse. They contaminated each other, and now they are buried together. In the faces of those at the graveside, there is fear and incomprehension. Missionary workers say that not all of those who are now sick are in the hospitals, and that many are dying alone in their village homes. No one knows how many and how many more are infected. The government has started a campaign to try to educate, to try to stop the spread. We've been told not to touch the sick, not to touch each other, he says. We don't shake hands anymore. But conditions are so bad in Zaire's hospitals, the collapsing economy cannot even afford the basics of new needles for every patient. Yesterday, a plane arrived with medical goods from the U.S., including protective suits. But some doctors are warning it is only a matter of time before cases of Ebola fever are confirmed in the crowded capital, Kinshasa. And this morning, Mort, in one of this nation's most influential papers, there's an editorial that says that with sanitary conditions in this capital and in other cities in Zaire, it can only be a matter of time that these places are, well, in fact, what the paper says, perfect breeding grounds for viruses like Ebola. Mort?
So, Sheila, all the evidence seems to indicate that the epidemic is not under control.
That seems to be the message this morning. We talked just a short while ago with an official from the International Committee of the Red Cross who has arrived here in Zaire. He's on his way up to Kitwit with leaflets to try to teach people how to combat this virus. And he said that he believed, that other international health workers believe, that the virus is still in its ascendancy. We have not yet seen all the cases of illness. We have not yet seen all the deaths.
There's been a lot of concern that business people or medical workers or even tourists might carry the disease beyond the borders of Zaire. That concern continues this morning, doesn't it?
Well, it does. The area of Kitwit is, in fact, under a kind of quarantine. Now, it's a sort of a porous quarantine, shall we say. Kitwit is a major supplier of food for the capital, Kinshasa, and in this part of the world, there's always a way around roadblock if you want to get through badly enough. What the government is trying to do is to stop panic. They don't want people to flee from that area. There is no evidence that the virus is yet in Kinshasa. There is no evidence that the virus has been carried outside of Zaire. And so I think the word this morning is just watch and wait.
Right. Thank you, Sheila. Thanks for being with us.
You're watching Sleepcore. Sleep tight.
Hello, I'm Carla Robinson at CBC News World's National News Center. Almost 500,000 music fans are rocking and rolling this hour at Toronto's Downsview Park. After weeks of hype, the SARS relief concert is in full swing. More than a dozen big-name acts are performing. The Guess Who and Rush took to the stage in the last few hours, and still to come, AC/DC is set to hit the stage this hour. And the Rolling Stones a few hours from now. The CBC's Mike Wise is at Downsview, and he joins us now. Mike, how's the show been so far, and what's the crowd like?
Oh, Carla, it's a great evening for fans who came out here for some nice rock and roll. You say AC/DC on any minute now, actually. There's a great moment just a few seconds ago when there was a strum of the guitar from AC/DC getting ready behind the scene. And I looked back, and simultaneously, I saw 500,000 people all get up off of their seats and look for some action on the stage. Very cool evening. It's turning out after a very hot day. The crowd is in great mellow spirits, anticipating some great music. We had some pictures from earlier this evening as well. Some of the other performers, the Guess Who, really got the crowd up and running and jumping around, as well as Rush that just finished their set with an extended final act coming after that. Here we're looking at some Guess Who pictures right now, a sense of how the crowd is looking. Still looking back over my shoulder, waiting for AC/DC to take the stage, and of course,
with the big crowd, has there been any safety problems? I understand there may have been an overdose at the concert.
Yeah, well, we looked into this. There was reports of someone having a heroin overdose coming to the concert. Checked with Toronto Ambulance. They're quick to point out this was one incident that happened before the concert even started. It was a gentleman on his way into the concert. He was met by emergency personnel, taken to hospital where he was treated, released, and apparently they say he immediately came right back here to enjoy the concert as well. That sort of thing has been happening, maybe not with heroin, but certainly with people suffering from heat exhaustion and heat stroke, which has been the big problem. You see the crowds here. The heat was just beating down this afternoon. There were organizers trying to make sure people stayed hydrated, kept the water flowing. Apparently, talking to emergency people, the medical tents they have set up here have almost been like a merry-go-round. People will go in suffering from heat exhaustion symptoms, spend a couple of hours there rehydrating, getting ready, leaving to enjoy the concert again, just as a new batch of people who maybe should have been keeping up with drinking the water come in as well. But certainly it's getting cooler now as we get ready for the last two acts of the evening.
Sounds like fun, and thank you, Mike. The CBC's Mike Wise at the SARS relief concert in Toronto.
The symptoms are quite familiar, and very likely you'll come up with a correct diagnosis. Yes, it looks like a cold, a common cold. Runny nose, headache, achiness, very often a slight fever. Those are some of the symptoms of the common cold. Well, how do we get into that unhappy state? Do we have colds simply because of cold, because of ice, snow, and low temperature? No. Funny thing about colds, where it is coldest, the inhabitants hardly ever get colds. Explorers tell us that Eskimos are cold-free, unless they come in contact with visitors from outside their frozen world. Then, if it is not just cold weather, what is it that causes so many of us to catch cold? Scientists think that most colds are caused by extremely small microorganisms called viruses. Viruses, and there are many different kinds of them, can be scattered with each particle of saliva and mucus, when one sneezes or coughs, for instance. But do not think for a moment that cold-producing viruses are spread only by sneezing and coughing. If by some magic the tiny particles of saliva and mucus could be made visible as a black smudge, we quickly would realize in how many other ways we are apt to scatter bacteria and viruses all around us. For instance, Jane here has a cold. Look at that smudge. Look at those germs she leaves on the doorknob. And here's Bob's hand picking them up. Bob, his hand now covered with germs picked up from that doorknob, transfers them to a book. Sue, having the bad habit of wetting her finger to turn pages, carries the germs from the book to her mouth, and then passes them along with a pencil to Anne. Anne carries them home and leaves them on the family's dinner table. Yes, even during an ordinary conversation, saliva and mucus particles escape our mouth and easily reach others who inhale them as they breathe. Just remember how breath becomes visible on a cold day. How then, with so many germs surrounding us, can we avoid having colds all the time? Well, fortunately, our body has defenses against this enemy. Normally, we breathe through our nose. The nose, as well as the sinuses, the eustachian tubes, and the throat, are lined with a delicate membrane. If, under a microscope, you look at the lining of the nose, we call it the nasal membrane, you can see that it is covered with tiny moving threads. These are called cilia. They move back and forth like stalks of grain when a wind blows over a field. The cilia are covered with a warm, moist, sticky substance called mucus. The nose usually secretes about a quart of this liquid every 24 hours. This mucus, by warming and moistening the air we breathe in, prepares it for our lungs. The mucus also catches and destroys microorganisms, that is, bacteria and viruses. The movement of the cilia carries the mucus down to the pharynx. Then it is coughed out or swallowed into the stomach, where any remaining microorganisms are destroyed by the digestive juices. If these defenses are weakened, the cold virus will gain a foothold and cause the inflammations which so often are associated with the common cold. The common cold is not a serious sickness, but still, medical science as yet has not found a cure for it. Ah, yes, there are remedies galore, all sorts of medications, which soothe pain and headaches and so bring some relief. However, they do not cure colds. And no matter how convincingly they may be advertised, do not use them without having checked with your doctor. But there is a sound prescription. If you have a cold, don't stay in school, because if you do, you may send others home with your cold. If you have a cold, stay home. Stay in bed. This is the prescription which common sense and medical science recommend. Medicines, but only those your doctor prescribes. No others. Warmth, rest, which you can get best when you stay in bed. And while you're there, you might as well make the best of it. Right. Use tissues instead of handkerchiefs. That way you'll dispose of the germs much better than when you blow them into a handkerchief. However, should you not feel better in a couple of days, or if you keep on having a fever, you should ask your parents to call a doctor. You see, what you think is a simple cold could really be the first symptoms of some other disease, such as measles, infantile paralysis, diphtheria, whooping cough, scarlet fever, influenza, and others. However, even if your illness proves to be only a simple cold, it is still important that you take care of it. A cold which is not treated might very well back up along the mucous membrane and so invade the sinuses, the cavities in the bones of the face and the skull. Or the infection may reach the middle ears when it invades the eustachian tubes, which connect the middle ears with the throat. Frequently, the inflammation also travels down the respiratory tract to the pharynx, the larynx, and the trachea. Your throat feels sore and your voice is husky. It travels to the bronchi. You have a bad cough. And occasionally even to the lungs, and that is pneumonia. These are painful complications, and they often take a long time to clear up. The best defense against the common cold and all these other diseases is to keep up the body's natural resistance. To do so, you must eat regularly and well-balanced meals. That is, meat, vegetables, fruit, milk, and so on. Get lots of exercise and fresh air. but do not exhaust yourself. In cold weather, you must wear sensible clothing to provide proper warmth to remain healthy. Go to bed at a reasonable hour. While you grow, you need about 10 hours of sleep each night. Sleep recharges the body's energies. Protect yourself against infection. Keep pencils and other things out of your mouth. Never take bites of other people's food. Do not use somebody else's drinking straw or glass, not even within your own family. In the bathroom, for instance, use only your glass. And wash your hands frequently and thoroughly, especially before eating. When you wash your hands, you wash away many of the disease-carrying smudges you may have picked up. But if in spite of all these precautions, you still come down with a cold, let us repeat, take it to bed and stay there until it has run its course. This is the safest way to regain your health and to return as quickly as possible to work, to fun, and to play.